Hi, mentors. Welcome to the Unintentional Mentor Podcast, and I'm happy and honored to introduce you to your first unintentional mentor, Mark Silverman. For those of you watching video-wise, I apologize for the small quality of the video. Zoom did a fun little upgrade as we started recording these episodes, and the quality of the video is small, but the audio and the conversation itself is well worth it. I am happy and honored to introduce you to your first unintentional mentor, Mark Silverman.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, Mike.
How's it going?
It's going amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. You get to, unfortunately, be guest number one on the Unintentional Mentor Podcast.
Dude, you have no idea how freaking honored I am, given how you and I met on the set of one of your movies with my son, and you in charge of everyone and everything, and to be here on the podcast is just really an honor.
Thank you. I was talking to Jennifer, my girlfriend, literally before you and I talked, and she's like, "When are you going to be the guest on your own show? Because everybody's going to bring you up." And I'm like, "That maybe if we hit like a milestone." But today is about you, and what I'd like to do is introduce you to a lot of people, because you, to me, are an unintentional mentor. I watch you through your live shows that you do periodically, through your Mastering Midlife Podcast. I own both of your books, the 1.0 and 2.0. But today isn't about hyping the things that you do, but really just the whys of why you're doing. So for those that may not know who you are, give us a brief 2-minute introduction into Mark.
Who am I? Let's see. I'm dad to Zach and Jake. I have 2 wonderful rescue dogs. Hope that noise wasn't too bad in the background. Let's see. Who am I? I am just a guy trying to make it in life, and had a colorful past, had a really great and successful sales career, transitioned into coaching in the helping field. So I consider myself an executive coach now, an author. I speak, I do workshops, I podcast, and I do everything I can to impact the world in the best way I can possibly do. That's who I am these days.
Well, that's clearly not a lot. No, that's awesome. That's amazing. Was there anybody along the way that inspired you or motivated you to kind of go those directions?
Well, in those directions, that I didn't really know what these directions were. For me, when I was homeless when I was 27, came into town 135 pounds, and I wasn't really a very viable human. So when I got sober and I got a job and I was building myself back up in my late 20s, going to college, 1 class, 2 classes at a time, my 2 role models actually were George Strait and Jack Ryan from the Tom Clancy novels, because to me, those were the 2 examples of what it would be like to be the ideal man, right? To grow up, be a man, be an adult. So I had 2 fictional characters. Now I had wonderful mentors and sponsors and 12-step programs and all those people who helped me start to build a person. But for me, those were my pinnacle. Those are, Jack Ryan had such a sense of integrity and purpose. And he was just so clear to me that was foreign. So I really devoured those novels. As I went along, I'm really lucky. There's something about me that attracts incredibly successful, mature people who want to help me. So one of my first mentors was at the Four Seasons. I was waiting tables at the Four Seasons, and the vice president of the Four Seasons took a liking to me. And I actually asked him, would he be willing to be my mentor? And I was waiting tables. I'm in my early 30s and I'm waiting tables. And he said yes. So I met with him once a month and I sat down and talked to him about, my aspirations and what I wanted to do. And they were not clear. I didn't really know anything beyond waiting tables. I just knew I didn't want to do that anymore. I knew I wanted to graduate college, which took me like 12 years, but I did it. And he sat down with me, and, it was really nice to have that kind of a person champion me. And then I started using, in one of my classes, they said, go interview 3 people who you admire. And I remember interviewing one of the most successful, because I worked in the Four Seasons, I ran into really rich, famous, successful people. And I asked 3 really successful business people in Washington, D.C., if I could interview them. And I became friends with all 3 of them. So again, I had mentors. I had people who would help me along the way. And I would say I was humble enough only because I had no self-esteem, no self-awareness. Like, I was homeless. I just was like, oh my God, these people will talk to me. And that's how it started, is just talking to people who had lives. Cause I didn't really know what it was like to have a life. I was just scraping by the best I could. And then soon, I got married, I had kids, started making tons of money. And that's when I really needed some help to figure out how to become an adult, to become a father, and joining things like the Mankind Project, which is, a group of men who are helping men grow up and become better fathers and husbands, and just men in the community in general, and all those stuff. So it took a lot to build who Mark is today.
Well, I want to go back to the fact that 2 of your mentors were fictional. I mean, one of mine, Mr. Rogers, actually 2 Mr. Rogers. You have Steve and Fred, Captain and Mr. And growing up, it's one of those things where you don't realize the impact these fictional characters can have on you because they're fictional, but they also give you a really great guiding point, that, for people like myself and maybe even like you, like, we didn't have those human reference points at the initial part of our lives to focus on, to say this is who we could be like. So those individuals, those characters, stepped into those roles. But you
Thank you for
mentioned
not making fun of me and actually acknowledging that, because I am very proud. I'm proud of my role models.
Oh, I love my role. Look, I'm interviewing you with Funko Pops behind me. I'm really not going to make fun of you for fictional characters. But I think those fictional characters are really relevant, and they're really important, especially when you're growing up. Those are things that you can look to, because not everybody has a large family, or not everybody has a really great community of people, or access
or
to
a functional family, to
or a functional
right?
family. Yeah. I grew up in Baltimore City, and there wasn't a lot of people that, for the first couple years of my life, outside of a few fringe family members, that I could look at and be like, this is who I want to be. But then you have people that are on your TV or in your comic books or in your movies that show up to your home, and you invite them in and you learn more about them, and they start giving you those lessons, like, by osmosis. But I do want to talk about you mentioned interviewing 3 business people. Were those conversations like informative, or were they just homework for you?
No, I use them specifically to learn how to foster relationships with people who wouldn't talk to me otherwise. I waited on them every morning for breakfast, so they wouldn't really give me the time of day. When I went, and that's one of the cool things about having a podcast, about writing a book. You call people and you say, I'm writing a book. I'm really interested in your perspective on this thing. And people will open up to you. So the people who wouldn't have opened up to you otherwise. So, like, you want to talk to Kevin Smith, you want to talk to some people who are pretty famous, and their time is limited. And, they would love to chat with you. It's not like they wouldn't want to chat with you, but they have to be really careful where they spend their time. They'll spend their time to share their gifts. I have on my podcast, Jeff Hoffman, who was the former CEO of Priceline and founder of Priceline, worth $60 billion. He's going to be on my podcast. Not because he likes me and he wants to hang out with me. He doesn't have time to hang out with me, but he wants to make an impact. And he knows the conversation we're going to have is different than the usual conversations he has about entrepreneurship and business. So that's a way to actually foster relationships. People just love when you're interested in them and you want their perspective. So it's not that hard to get mentors.
Yeah. Speaking of which, being interested, like, what inspired the Mastering Midlife podcast? Because you, through your podcast, introduced me and countless others to potential mentors in almost every episode. So what brought that idea on?
That one, I can't take credit for that, because I was writing the book Mastering Midlife, and I interviewed a bunch of people for the book, and I was ready to get serious about writing the book, and I meditate every morning. And this is where people are going to start to tune out. But I sit on my cushion every morning and I meditate. And one morning I was sitting on my cushion and a voice said, you're going to start a podcast. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to start a podcast. I sound like a male Fran Drescher. Ain't happening. Can't stand the sound of my voice. Next morning, you're going to start a podcast, not write a book. Like, I'm not starting a podcast. Next morning, you're going to start a podcast. I was like, I don't want to start a podcast. And that voice has guided me before to miraculous things. I have, when in 3 days in a row, if something on the cushion says to me 3 days in a row to do something, I've called people and they just out of the blue, and they'll be like, how did you know this was happening? And that kind of thing. So I listened to the voice, and I had a call with one of my clients that day who happened to own a podcasting company, a podcasting production company. So I said, I got this crazy idea. I don't know, like, I can't do a podcast. And he's like, yeah, you can. And next thing I know, a week later, I'm hooked up with my producer and my, like all the people. And it's like, you're going to start a podcast and you're going to do 10 episodes and you're going to do this. And I started a podcast and I was good at it, like really good at it. And it shocked me and I loved it. If I could just quit everything and do one thing, I would talk to people and interview people and podcast all day long if that was a viable way for me to make a living. So now it's a labor of love. I wanted to leave something behind because the first 10 conversations, I'm going to get choked up now. I actually broke down and cried after my first 10 episodes when I looked at the body of work of my first 10 episodes.
Wow.
Because we talked about depression and mental illness in men. We talked about grief. We talked about sexuality in later in life and intimacy. So we talked the conversations that I knew that if I died the next day, that I was going to leave for people was going to change people's lives. So now 290 episodes later, whether one person listens or a million people listen, I know I've left a body of work that if people only listen to my podcast and didn't read any self-help books and didn't their lives would be changed because we talk spirituality. We talk about leadership. We talk about everything that a person who is trying to raise a family, taking care of elderly parents, trying to figure out retirement, trying to figure out climbing the ladder or making a living, trying to deal with their body changing. I have something for everybody in there. And for me, that's I'm leaving a legacy with that, which you're doing right now with this podcast.
No, thank you. I'm literally, I choked up hard. Look, I've listened to every episode. I've followed you as a friend and as, an unintentional mentor. Like you are one of 4 people who inspired to do this or inspired me to do this. For that reason, you and I can talk about anything. Like there's no bullshit, nothing on the table is left unexplored. And I feel the same way that happens in your podcast. And I'm really glad that you mentioned all of the things that you talk about, because I think people, when they think about a mentor, they just leave it strictly to the business role. And they think I need a mentor for leadership, or I need a mentor for my career. And my water heater just turned on and I don't care. What I think people fail to remember is those mentors are also critical in parts of people's lives that not everybody gets to touch. When you have somebody who, I have a lot of friends that are trans and gay, and they have a period in their life where a mentor helped them come to be and realize who they fully are. And, people who have come into the entertainment field who are wallflowers that might have never done that without a mentor guiding their way. And there is, at the crux of every one of those stories, is an unintentional or intentional mentor that really, gives somebody that internal voice that they might not have had on their own. And that's why I wanted you to be number one, because you provide that voice for a lot of people, and it means a lot to me. And I use this as an opportunity to not only appreciate you, but introduce you to a lot of other people who might not know the awesome work that you do through your
Thank you, I appreciate it.
podcast.
Can I get, that just reminded me, the first podcast I was ever a guest on was my friend Trip Lanier has the New Man podcast. It is a huge podcast. Listenership, the guests that he has are the world famous people. And he had me on his podcast. So it was the first one I've ever done. And he was a really great interviewer. And I thought we were going to have a conversation about difficult conversations. But little did I know, the reason he wanted to talk to me about difficult conversations wasn't because of my expertise and my book and all that stuff. It was because of a conversation we had late at night in a bar about my coming out to my kids. So, I was married to a woman, had 2 kids, and I came out to, and I married a man. Trip went right down that road. And we had the most raw conversation about me and the moment I had to tell my kids, about me, about my relationships, all of that stuff, and how I wanted to die and how horrible it was and how amazing it is now. Like if they, the transition, and the going through the fire to the other side to have this deep relationship with my kids. I got calls and messages and emails from all around the world, from men who were leaders in churches, men who were leaders in the military, like upper brass in the military, who said they cannot ever say it. One person drove 10 hours to, he asked if he could have a session with me. I said, sure. Would you like to do it over the phone, Zoom, or whatever? And he says, no, I want to meet you in person. And then I found out that he drove from Ohio to come because he said he just had to see that I was real. That was not my intention with the podcast. That was not my intention with my business and what I do. But it made a difference to people, and that's out there in the world. So the unintentional mentor thing is a really interesting concept.
Thank you. And again, today's not about me. It's a little bit about you. It's a lot about you. You're the guest. But what I do find is that those unintentional mentors are the ones that you're very lucky that people sought you out to let you know what they've done, change their lives. There are millions of people out there who have somebody like you who they listen to, that they look for guidance from, that they seek out in times of like needing a little bit more guidance or intelligence or wisdom or anything. And those mentors never know. Much like your podcast, I hope it's the same for mine. I hope somebody hears something from somebody. And even if one person walks away from one episode or series of episodes and is motivated or inspired or creates change because of those conversations, I feel like it's worth it. And I don't need to know. I mean, I'd be honored if anybody wants to talk about it, but I don't need to know. Like, I feel good about what I'm doing here. And if somebody feels inspired to reach out and let me know, thank you. But that's not why I'm doing this. And it's amazing to me because I could see that's not why you're doing what you're doing. The praise is almost tertiary, if I'm correct.
It's uncomfortable, actually.
I completely agree.
Because I would think that I would love it. I would think that they'll tell me how great I am. Tell me how, call me, well, my neighbor said they coined the phrase for me that I was the friendly neighborhood Yoda. You would think that I would love that and all that stuff, but really less and less, it's a little self-conscious and a little daunting. But when I let it in my heart instead of my head, it just feeds me. It feeds my soul. So, that's the difference for me, is when I actually receive that I made an impact on someone, it lands very differently than when I think about what I do.
So besides your 2 fictional, and they're not really fictional because in our heads they're flesh and bone and they're real.
George Strait is a real person. Fred Rogers is a real person, but I don't know George Strait, right? So I only knew what George Strait meant to me and portrayed for me, but that's actually true for almost everybody we meet. We only really know our interpretation of them in our heads.
So besides those 2 mentors, are there anybody else in your life? And Trip apparently made a huge impact on you. Were there
Yeah,
anybody?
Trip believed in me, and like he's one of the cool kids in the in crowd, and when he believed in me, that meant a ton. Oh, I've had so many incredible mentors. Alan Cohen, the author, Rich Litvin, who was my first coach, Steve Hardison, who is also one of my coaches and mentors. But there's people who I just kind of watch. There's this guy named Brett Culp. If you can follow him on Twitter,
I know Brett.
biggest heart you have. Like, you want to talk about modern day Mr. Rogers?
Yeah.
That man, you would think that nobody's that kind.
Oh, he is that good.
And after this pod, I want to know how you know him, but he's just what a lovely guy. There's a young kid on Twitter named Tej Dosa, and he is he's just a regular copywriter kind of guy who makes money on money Twitter and that kind of thing. But he talks about spirituality, and I've been watching him and listening to and reading his spiritual teachings, and he is so solid in the spirituality that I understand and the awakenings that I've had. And he's a young kid, but pure, unadulterated, none of the crap that's been layered onto what I got. And I just listen to him. So I find mentors everywhere. And I will tell you, actually, for me, everybody's a mentor. People who I disagree with and I don't like teach me so much. That I've learned when I'm angry at something, when I'm threatened by something that someone says, there's something I need to deal with in myself. Those have been my best teachers. Then there's people who I'm jealous of. I'm just jealous of their success. And I'm in a mastermind with my now coach, Brandon T. Adams, young, impossibly good looking, fit guy who's always got a camera in his face and is always working out without a shirt and just in business dealings with all these people and just so successful and all this stuff. And in the mastermind we're in, he keeps bringing what I call his merry band of overachievers, of all these hustle and grind, but really kind-hearted, big-hearted people, all good looking, fit and all this stuff. And, for a few weeks, I was just getting really angry. I'm going to be 59 years old in a couple months. Like, I'm getting really angry. I'm tired, man. Like, I'm not 30 years old and I'm not going to work out with my shirt off and all that stuff. But then I use that. I said, what am I resentful about? What am I angry? What am I being petty about with all these people? And I realized there's ingredients in what they do that life is trying to show me to bring into my world. Just because I'm 59 years old, I talk in my keynote speech, I talk about Michael Jordan and how Michael Jordan had 3 careers. He was 3 different kinds of players throughout his career to go from phenom, right, to champion to legend. And we need to do the same thing. So me now at 59, there's ingredients that these young, amazing men are bringing into my life that life is telling me I can incorporate. Maybe I need a nap where they don't, but I can incorporate some of that hustle and grind to get my message out, to make the impact that I want to make. So all of those people are mentors to me because they're teaching me something, even if it's uncomfortable.
I couldn't agree more. And it's, I don't think mentors, and you hit the nail on the head for me just in that last bit. Like, a mentor does not have to be somebody that is your age or older. You're not looking for like the wise old man on the hill anymore. You're really looking at anybody who provides even a modicum of inspiration or motivation. Look, I'm envious of anybody who, takes their shirt off and works out on Instagram, mainly because if I take my shirt off, my girlfriend looks at me and says, the beacons of Gondor are lit. Like, I am pasty pale no matter how much sun I get, and I don't want to blind anyone. But watching those people and watching, I have a friend of mine, Vince, who has gone through an amazing life change of fitness, from being a guy who was much bigger than me to about your size, and he's openly sharing that journey and openly sharing, the workouts that he's done. And to me, I'm watching that, like, of course I'm a little jealous that things are happening for him faster than me, but that's difference in metabolism and I'm okay with that. But it's also one of those things where I look forward every day to seeing, what he's doing to to keep himself going, to keep himself motivated. I look to you when you're posting about sharing stories with other people. I'm like, that is just, it makes the heart happy, and it makes the brain happy, and it gives the inspiration a little bit of a punch in the face to keep moving forward. But looking at unintentional mentors, um, have you picked any up along the way, like George Strait, that have stuck with you for a long time? Like, we have those mentors that come in and out, that help us, that motivate us. We'll forget their names, we'll remember their story, or we might remember them, but not how we met them. But are there anybody else along that way, like Tripp, like George Strait, that have also made a bigger impact on you?
Well, right now, my friend Tony Benici, who taught me meditation, and when he and I had a conversation about spirituality about 5-6 years ago, he said, "Do you really want to learn, or do you just want to play?" No, I really want to learn. He taught me the art of contemplation and going inward in a big way. And his dad, Dr. Andrew Benici, wrote a book about meditation and oneness that I read. So that's been really good. Most of the people that I think when we talk about this are the books I read. It's more the books that I read.
The books are equally mentor. Like I'm sitting in front of bookshelves. Mentors come in all mediums. I don't think they're limited to the people that you watch and hear, but the people that you read, the people that you ingest information from in any form.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, my newest mentors are Jeff Hoffman and Jay Samit. Both of them are wildly successful entrepreneurs who I at first identified out. One of my challenges has been at my age is I made a lot of money as a sales guy, but I've never been a great businessman according to my own belief system. So I realized that I have this limiting belief that I am not an entrepreneur. Even though I'm an entrepreneur, being a coach, doing what I'm doing, I'm totally an entrepreneur. But but the belief I've had was that I'm just not a good entrepreneur, and that this is beyond me to run the business of my business. And what Jay Samit, he wrote a book called Disrupting You and Future Proofing You, that I'm reading both of them at the same time. And Jeff Hoffman, what they've taught me is that that entrepreneurship is something you can learn. So I'm using them as role models and the step-by-step of what they teach, because they believe that entrepreneurship is going to solve the world's ills. I am now at my age saying, you know what, I can learn this entrepreneurship thing. It's not beyond me. I'm a smart guy. And that's my next journey. That's actually my next spiritual journey, actually, is to embrace entrepreneurship. Boots on the ground, real concrete stuff is the stuff that will grow my soul. So that, I want to make a big impact this year. In the next couple of years, I want to make a huge impact. I want to see what I can do with this thing. I know people are dying, and I know I have the medicine for them. So whether that's one person or 1 million people, I'm going to see what I can do with this thing through entrepreneurship, through doing things that are uncomfortable for myself, because this message of freedom and peace is so important.
You keep leaving me speechless, sir. I'm just in awe, watching and listening as you're talking. So that I'm so used to listening to you through the podcast and the show that I'm waiting for the other guests spark speaking now. So before I let you go, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk, what inspired Only Tens?
Oh, Only Tens. So the first Only Tens, what inspired Only Tens is that I am severely ADD, have real hard time keeping my attention on something that I don't want to do, which is what I learned in Only Tens. I can keep my attention on things. It's just I don't keep my attention on things that I don't want to do, so it was my PhD in how do I deal with ADD and get things done? How do I get off Ritalin? How do I deal with the way my brain works? How do I get honest with myself so that I can accomplish the things I want to accomplish? And that was through some coaching with my coach, Rich Litvin. And I said, you know what, I'm going to write a book about this, because I had this realization. Actually, it was Rich who had the realization. I said, Rich, I can't get anything done. I just can't get anything done. And he said, I don't think it's true that you can't get anything done. When you wanted to run the Marine Corps Marathon, did you run the Marine Corps Marathon? Yes. When you said you wanted to make $1 million one year, what'd you do? I said, well, I made the $1 million. Right. So when there's a new iPhone, even though I'm really busy, guess who has the new iPhone? No matter how busy he is, I have a new freaking iPhone. I have an iPhone 12, right? Like, who has time to go get an iPhone, right? So so the lie was that I can't get anything done. When I want to get something done, I can get something done. In fact, I get it done really well, really fast, and nothing stops me. So I started to look at that. And what I learned was that I lie to myself. I tell people that I want to do something when I may want to in theory, but I don't really want to do it. So it really gets hard to get on the list. So I wind up disappointing people. Then what I learned was everything that is on my to-do list and not on my to-do list is because of fear, is because of the fear of consequences or the want of a reward. There's always like some kind of qualifier behind everything on my to-do list. And that difficult conversations were the way to get out of overwhelm, setting boundaries, creating agreements, having those difficult conversations. So I wrote the book for myself, thinking I would be the only one who read it. It's sold about 60,000 copies. And then I rewrote it 5 years later, just this past year, because my publisher was like, before you write Mastering Midlife, you really need to redo this book with all the coaching, the 5 years of coaching you've done around it, the workshops you've done, your own. So add the anecdotes and add what people have done with Only 10. So I rewrote the book, and we're coming up on 70,000 copies, which blows my freaking mind. That, I get notes all the time that, how did you get inside my brain? I guess, a little ADD. But the truth is, we don't have a time management problem. We have an honesty problem. We're just not honest with ourselves and others.
Yeah, I gotta completely agree with you on that one. Like, you called me out on bullshit about weight loss, and immediately.
And now look at you, sexy beast.
Oh, stop it! I am at my halfway mark. I'm still going, but that's the thing, is like the honesty check, and that little bit of that phone call and a little bit of mentorship really, a year later is still something I look to every day of like, let me be honest with myself. Is eating this emotional pizza really going to be worth it? Or is Mark going to be going, why are you lying to yourself? And I'm going to be like, well, I just fucking want pizza today, and I'm going to be okay with that. So, you're
not a victim of it. You can do that.
Not at all.
You can go eat the pizza, but you can't say, I can't lose weight. Oh, it's my hormones. Oh, I don't. It's like, oh, I'm choosing to do this. Now you're empowered.
Yeah. I mean, for me, and it's I'm watching people lose weight at a rapid pace. People have outpaced me in a fraction of the time. But for me, our conversation was more about being honest with myself, setting a sustainable diet that, like, once I go through the fad or the quick diet, like, can it be sustainable? And then the third most important thing is, like, will I fucking enjoy it? Like, I don't want to hate life because I just want to lose weight. So what I did is I just, I got honest. I started listening to my body. Like, I cut everything out for 3 days and then slowly added stuff in, figured out where the weight spikes hit, and then just got really honest. Be like, hey, I'm having a shitty day. Is feeling good from eating a slice of pizza worth the 2 pounds it might cause? Sure. And then there's days where it's like, no, it's not. And then I won't have it. But like, it's that honesty piece that allows me to feel good about everything. And it came from a brief phone call and mentoring from a friend that makes those difference. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. And I really appreciate your work and your podcast and watching you as a human being. I love you, my friend. And is there anywhere people can go to learn about you?
Before I tell them to learn about me, I just love the chance encounter that we had, all those years ago, and how that's turned into a friendship and a relationship. It's really, you never know who's going to become one of those fellow travelers, and I appreciate that. People can find me at www.markjsilverman.com. Mark the letter J Silverman.com. They can go there. There's all kinds of free videos and trainings and all kinds of stuff. And the podcast is called Mastering Midlife: How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You.
Mark, you are the first guest of the Unintentional Podcast. You made this very easy, and I greatly appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, mentors, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Mark. There's a few times I got a little choked up. I'm not going to lie to you. I have always enjoyed speaking to this man. I've enjoyed the knowledge that he gives. I hope you have found something valuable, if not inspiring, from this. And I look forward to talking with you and introducing you to your next unintentional mentor in the next episode.